substitute? Who's his substitute? Karen, I think it is. So we're good.
Tourism. David is Karen.
Yeah, Karen.
So,
And you would just be asking.
so we don't need to.
Stephanie and John.
Oh, okay, yeah, we're up here on the side. We've got.
Satellite Beach, and
Okay.
there's a whole group of us who are very excited. You can actually see from that people matter.
We got all 7 chain lanes represented.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, well, okay.
Discussion.
I'm sure this is going to be some of your new events.
I can give you lots of emotional personal.
Okay, well, you have 3 minutes.
Him to count or all the there's no bill reference.
We got all the swim lanes represented.
Okay.
All 7.
Okay, great. So let's, good morning. Let's call the meeting to order. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. So looking at the agenda, a little different today. We don't have a panel discussion per se, but we are going to take a short break, I think, after the other reports and special presentations. Is there a motion to pass the agenda?
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I do the roll call?
Oh, sorry.
Lorraine Koss,
Here.
John Byron,
Yo,
Stephanie Ely. Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie Ely has, she will be arriving late, about an hour. She had another meeting this morning. Courtney Barker.
Here.
David Lane had a conflict this morning. Jean Artusa.
Here.
John Windsor.
here.
Charles Venuto.
Here.
Vinnie Taranto.
Present.
John Durkee.
Here.
Todd Swingle has also had a work conflict. Karen McLaughlin. Here. Danielle Bowden. Here. Terry Castro. I don't see him yet. He may be arriving late.
Okay,
And we have a quorum.
great.
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jean seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, so let's move on to our monthly, oh no, the approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. We move on to Virginia's report.
Thank you. You may recall that when we wrote the Save Our Indian River Lagoon plan, we were anticipating a start date of October 1st, 2017. And so this would be the beginning had it not been for a lot of early efforts on your part and the county's part and participating cities to come up with projects that we could start last year ahead of schedule. I just wanted to note, welcome to the real intended start date. And we are poised for an exceptionally productive year coming up due to that early start. Our budget has been adopted for this fiscal year by the County Commission on September 26th. We have 4 of our positions filled, and the 5th starts on Monday. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce Brandon Smith, if Brandon will stand up. Brandon has 17 years of experience with the county. He is a graduate of Florida Institute of Technology. He did a little summer study abroad in New South Wales, Australia. He's worked for Parks and Rec. He's a Florida Master Naturalist trainer. He's very active in numerous environmental organizations in our community, and so he's going to be a wonderful communicator for us and coordinator with a lot of the community and with the city. So we're very much looking forward to him starting on Monday. But he's been watching for the last few months, so he'll hit the ground running. At the last meeting, there was a discussion about whether ground penetrating radar, GPR, could be used to try to find sort of underground veins of quickly moving water in the groundwater. And staff has done some research and found that while GPR is looking to be able to do that in the future, and testing is going on in university settings and industrial settings. That level of technology is not currently available. We have more contracts with cities for getting their projects underway. So you have a list there. Rockledge continues on their septic to sewer project, and they've connected, it was 104 homes a week ago when I wrote this. I'm sure it's more now. They were, of course, slowed down by the hurricane. It makes it really hard to dewater to get these projects done. So we'll be extending their contract, but that's moving along nicely. MIMS muck dredging was also delayed by Hurricane Irma, but we'll get that back on track. The Sykes Creek dredging project is currently advertised. The bids are out there. It's open for 60 days. It's a very complicated project, and so the consultants wanted to allow potential bidders a lot of time to prepare their bids and sharpen their pencils on that. So they wanted 90 days, and I wanted 45, and we settled on 60, and so we're looking forward to that bid opening on December 6th. We also have design engineers selected for 2 more septic to sewer projects. The utilities has led that search for consultants and finished that selection process. And the $1 million grant-funded groundwater research project the grant was approved by the County Commission last meeting, and the Marine Resources Council contract to get that work underway was also approved. We are working with the cities to try to get their year 2 and year 3 projects under contract so that we can take those dollars that have the revenues that have come in ahead of schedule and get them to work preparing engineering, design, permitting for those later year projects. You asked us to research Puget Sound water quality management program, and they have, it's a very large, complex, great program, and so we're working our way through that, so that research is still underway. There was a suggestion that we try using water quality test kits, like from aquarium industry, for testing the water quality in irrigation wells. We're developing a pilot program for that, and so we should have more for you on that next month. You requested that we look at broadening the scope of outreach to be funded by the plan, and you have a grass clipping campaign suggestion in your packet, and we also have an agenda item on outreach, so we'll talk about that more when we get to that item. The preliminary design is done for the Micco septic sewer project, and the survey is done. That project's moving forward very quickly. Brevard Zoo hired a consultant to actually look at what are their strengths in living shoreline oyster work and how best can they serve the purpose of the plan and of this committee in getting those living shoreline projects done. We've had a couple meetings with that consultant, so that's just, wonderful that the community is behind what we're trying to do, and they're trying to step up. The muck dredging master plan scope, we're going to talk about that project under presentations today, but as far as the scope of work, we're in our second round of edits, and so we'll look for input from you today and finalize that scope of work and try to get it going. We have been working with the Florida legislature on funding requests for the coming session. I wanted you to be aware, you have an announcement this morning at 9:30. Representative Gail Harrell is holding a press conference on in-river lagoon legislation down at Harbor Branch. Senator Debbie Mayfield is also working on legislation for septic to sewer. Coach P. Placencia is also very supportive of legislation. Randy Fine, Representative Randy Fine, I was with his office yesterday. They're interested, continue to be interested in septic legislation. So lots of great things happening with our legislative representatives as well. And The Florida Tech muck research continues. We are close to finalizing those second-year reports, and we'll have those to you as soon as they are ready, which I know John is on the reviewers, and
As soon as they are ready.
it should be very soon, yes. And I'm as guilty as the rest of them for being slow in my edits and a few other things in the way.
Virginia, I have
Yes.
a question going back on the work completed, the $1 million grant that was approved by the commission. What was the vote on that? Do you know? Was it unanimous?
I believe it went through on consent,
It was
so
on
yes, it was a
consent.
5-0
Okay.
vote on consent.
Thank you.
And could I ask a question also, the muck dredging master plan scope revisions, does that include spoil management? Does that include
Yes.
figuring out where all that stuff's
To some
going?
degree, and I'm sure that Mr. Berry is going to cover,
And is that coordinated with the other bodies that do dredging?
yes.
Thank you.
So under meetings this month, I just wanted to highlight two things. The Brevard Legislative Delegation meeting on September 20th, it was really fabulous to hear city after city after city come up, and amongst their top priorities were the Indian River Lagoon, and specific mention of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan and trust fund. And so I wanted you to know about that city's support and prioritization. And then, as you know, you had asked us to have a training workshop for cities to submit substitution projects for the next round, and that workshop was October 12th, and there were over 40 people in attendance, and from my perspective, that workshop went really well, and so we'll be looking forward to great proposals coming in for your edits.
And all the municipalities were represented?
I did not do I didn't, we didn't do a roll call that way,
Okay.
but there was very good representation.
The year zero stuff that we dealt with, which was a brilliant way to spend money that wasn't anticipated when the plan was put together. The substitute projects we saw had some lumpy parts to them. They were incomplete, there was lack of understanding and so on. And it was both sides of the table. The first time you'd seen them too, or your team, your tiny team, which I think was you and Carol at the time. Do you think we're going to see better quality substitute project inputs this time? And are you ready to edit them before we see them?
We have been working on a checklist of things for staff to look for and evaluating those. And we also added a box per your request for what the cities are doing in terms of outreach, if they have an outreach strategy associated with those projects. So we've put more questions on the form to collect the kinds of information that you've asked for in the past. And yeah, I think we're on a good track.
And remembering that brevity is the soul of wit, can we perhaps avoid an agenda package with 249 pages?
Yeah, when do we get that? A couple days after Christmas, so I guess it's after New
So you
Year's.
do not want to see the complete applications?
Let me, just a thought, top of the head. There's really two parts to these applications. One's the meat and potatoes. Here's what we want, here's all the details you need, here's, dollars per pound of nitrogen, et cetera. And there's a second part, which is backup information. I wonder if we might not see that as here's the primary applications, and here's a package that's got all this other stuff in it that's tabbed and indexed the same way and so on. We got a lot of words and graphs and charts and maps that get in the way of the stuff that's important. It's just a thought.
Okay.
Is the new application online, Penny?
So, Virginia, we've been working on this. I don't know if you guys have seen I was going to talk about the communication strategy, but the short answer is there's a draft version that was just put up earlier this week, but it's only viewable within the county network because it's a draft version. It's not on their public-facing server. So we did get some looks at it. We did get some feedback about auto-filling fields to try to prevent people from not putting in the information that we need or giving them options to help us get better. I don't know if that will be available for this. What's it, December, I think, is the deadline, December 18th. So it's a hope.
Yeah.
If not, we've already had discussions on next year, how we can possibly make it better, such as giving people options to fill it out a little bit at a time. Right now, when they go on, they've got to fill out the whole application at once. And as John alluded to, the applications can be pretty complicated. So we want to give them the ability to be able to fill in a little bit now, come back, fill in a little later, and that ability, I don't believe, will be ready by December. But I've already requested that that's something we look into for next year and the following years.
So we've been testing the form in the internal network and finding, where those flaws were, and so that's what we're working through now.
Virginia, could you introduce the gentleman to your right?
Yes. This is John Denninghoff. He's the Assistant County Manager. The County Manager, Frank Abate, really wanted to be with you here today. We've got important topics, as always, but especially today, but he's out of town. So Mr. Denninghoff is here representing the County Manager's office.
Okay, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And that's it for your report?
Yes. Fiscal.
Oh, yes.
Financial report. So normally you have one page because you have one fiscal year to look at. Right now, we've just completed our prior fiscal year, so the first page is the 2017 fiscal year report. And the thing to note there is in that top line, we budgeted $25.5 million. And what has actually come in the door is $24,898,729. That's because the collections that are collected every time we purchase things here, right? They're collected by the store for a month, and then they're sent to the state, and the state collects all the different stores for a month, and then close to 3 months later, we get the revenue back from the state. And so we will see several million more come in that were collected last year, and they will accrue to last year according to financial accounting principles. So we'll continue to bring you last year's budget or fiscal report as long as it's changing. But the other items on that sheet should not change, just that top line. Revenues.
So this is through, it says October 12th, but when I look at the graph, or try to look at the graph, this is actually revenues collected through July? Am I misunderstanding?
Yes, the August and September collections will not arrive until the end of October and the end of November, and those will get posted to last fiscal year.
Okay, so to clarify, the budget of $25,500,000, we've already achieved, and there's still 2 more months of revenue to come in, so we'll actually end up with an extra $6 million or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Basic question, Virginia, the statutory reduction, does that roll forward? Whose statute? Is it county or state? Do we get credit for not spending it? Or is it just simply?
Right, it's a 5% statutory reduction.
Yes.
It's mandated by the state to make sure that we don't overspend the dollars that we actually have.
And since we didn't, that rolls into the next year or holds
Yes.
with this year?
No, it rolls forward to next year.
Thank you.
All right, and moving on to the fiscal 18 sheet. So you see we've budgeted the $34 million. Obviously, we anticipate that we will exceed that revenue as well. And you can see how the projects are budgeted. The blue portion, the bottom half of the sheet, continues on to a next sheet. So see, we have a lot of projects planned for this coming fiscal year. So the budget is set up for those. The contracted column, we are still in the process in October of closing out all of the purchase orders and requisitions and contracts from last year and reopening those in this fiscal year. So that contracted column is not yet fully populated. There's a lot that is contracted that's not showing up there yet because this is pulled from our SAP system, whatever that stands for. So, this will be this will look more realistic next month, but this is what we could pull from the system for now.
Could you remind me again, the withdrawal of the Cape Canaveral stormwater projects? Was that because they just,
They
Okay.
were baffle boxes that when they went to retrofit them
Yeah.
with floating trays to keep the leaf litter and debris out of the water, to keep it from rotting, the whole box is underwater all of the time, and so no amount of flotation was going to work.
yeah,
Virginia, if the 1275000 of statutory reduction from fiscal year 2017 is rolling forward, where is it on the 2018 budget? When do we
It's
see
part
it?
of that balance forward number that shows 27,939,987.
It's in there. Thank you.
Yes. And that's it for the financial report.
all right. Okay, so we can move on to our first presentation.
All right, the first presentation is on the master programmatic permitting of muck removal from the lagoon. The presentation today is going to be by Mr. Stephen Berry, who's a senior consultant for Edmunds Associates. And we've been working with Stephen and Edmunds to put together a team of sort of the best experts in this field and in this area, and many of them are decorating the room. While he hails from Edmunds, he represents an expert team.
Thank you, Virginia. And on behalf of Matt Shelton, Tetra Tech, Shayla Patel, GMC, and myself, appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present our approach to master programmatic permitting for the Indian River Lagoon. Next slide. As you all know, in 2016, the voters of Brevard County approved a referendum that will generate approximately $200 million over a 10-year period. There are a series of pathways in which these funds will be applied: implementation of BMPs, education, stormwater treatment, others. But it'll also include what we're phrasing as environmental restoration dredging, and that's the focus of today's discussion, as well as advancing the timeline for that dredging. Next slide. What we want to do is we want to minimize redundancy in data collection and iterative consultations. We want to save county and agency staff time, and we want to minimize permitting delays in the future. Next. The main intent is to maximize tax dollars for IRL restoration, because that is truly in the public's interest. Now, programmatic permitting is not a new concept, but we believe our refined approach will be the key to have successful expedited permitting under a programmatic basis. The areas that we will be looking at in our application would be the North IRL, the Central IRL, the Banana River Lagoon, and Southern Mosquito Lagoon, all of these within Brevard County. What we believe is conservatively that you will save in excess of $1 million over the 15-year permit period. And how will this be accomplished? Primarily, it's through advancing the dredging timeline. You have mobilization costs that go up every year. Mobilization costs are a major line item in any dredger's bid package. Similarly, cost per cubic yard, it goes up every year. If you have spikes in fuel, you'll see both your mobilization cost and your cost per cubic yard go up. So anything that we could do to advance the attack on the muck earlier within the permit period on a broad scale within those areas I just mentioned will result in substantial savings to the county. We'll also be looking at one state and one federal permit application review, including Section 7 consultation, which I'll get into in a few minutes. The whole idea is once you get those permits in place, you will have the ability to attack the muck in multiple locations throughout the county and those areas I just mentioned above. People ask, why does it take so long to get a dredging permit? Well, I was a regulator for the Corps of Engineers, and I processed a lot of permits, including major dredging projects. Had stacks and stacks of application on my desk. As you all know, DEP has cut back its staff in recent years, so it's not to the level it was 5 years ago, not to mention 10 or 15 years ago. The federal government, there's a hiring freeze. So as we're looking at the new day where 1,000 people a day are coming back to Florida, and many of these folks, you know, are people of means and desires to be close to the water or on the water, so they'll want piers and they'll want docks and they'll want marinas. So you can imagine with the limited staff that these agencies already have, the pressure and the length of the queue in years 5 and 10, should people go back to say, well, we want a dredging project, you know, how that is going to add time, and remembering that we're on the clock. We're on this 10-year clock. So, next slide, please. We're looking at an approach that would use a 3-year rolling plan to accelerate the IRL recovery and avoid future permitting delays and challenges. We want the focus on SAV, restoration, and nutrient load reduction. There will be a single point of entry for Chapter 120 administrative hearing challenges, and that's actually very important. We know that a majority of the voters approved the referendum, but we also know that it only takes an individual or a group of individuals, for whatever reasons they do not feel comfortable or don't want a permit to be approved, that they can go through the Chapter 120 process, and basically if they're successful to go to, and I've dealt with a lot of administrative hearings, then essentially the process tolls. It stops. The Corps of Engineers cannot issue their permit unless water quality certification is issued by the DEP. So what we want to do, and we have the feedback from the agencies that they're behind it, is one single point of entry for Chapter 120 administrative hearing challenge for this 15-year permit period. State and federal agency support. We have had informal consultation, not consultation, but informal conversations with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, with FEEP in Tallahassee, and these have all been at the highest level. We are talking about decision makers. We are talking about decision makers who are saying, you know, bring it on. This is what we want. We want to get behind this. Several of them have said, you know, we voted for this referendum. We are personally vested in making this successful, making it flexible, and making it happen on an expedited basis because they are personally involved. Also, as senior managers, they see the stack of application on their staff's desk. So, you know, from that standpoint, being good managers, they say, well, if this programmatic means that they understand it, you know, let's get behind this, because then we'll have folks, our staff, focus on other applications and have the programmatic permits in place. Task sequencing. The very first thing.
Just a quick question, the single point of entry, single point in time for the 15-year period?
For when the DEP puts out its public notice to say, we are planning on issuing this permit, you have a certain period of time that if you want to file an administrative hearing challenge, that's your single point of entry. The future, once the permit's issued, it's compliance with the permit conditions. As far as the single point of entry.
One point in time or a window in time for the 15-year period.
That is correct, right at the beginning before the permit's issued. So in terms of sequencing, the first step that we would have is we would work with Virginia and her staff and the county to make sure that we have an agreement on what the objectives that we will be pursuing. We want to make sure, you know, what are the elements of the applications that are negotiable and which are not. We don't want to go there. Within the second one, it's very, very important. It's the consensus building process that in an informal way, we've already begun it. We will be working with state and federal congressional staffs. We know that they will be behind it, but we know that communication to make sure that they're fully informed of what we're doing and how we're doing it, we will engage those staffs. We will also be engaging on a consensus building basis the regulatory agencies at a high level, and the natural resource agencies such as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, FIND, the SHPO, Agricultural Resources, But the key point here is we've already seen a willingness on those agencies to say, the stars are aligned, the funds are there, we are on the clock, we are all involved in this, and so from that standpoint, we're excited about the feedback that we've been given that this will be a successful endeavor. Another aspect of what we will do during this effort is look at dredge material management areas. That was brought up a few minutes ago. We will be looking at the FIND sites, and we will be working with county and FIND to develop a master memorandum of agreement, which will look at their existing sites and the future sites that they have planned, so that there will be a mutual agreement as to how those sites can be used for a temporary placement of the muck, and that will basically put far into the future a place for certain areas we're going to go using the FIND sites. Now, we will also be looking at non-FIND sites. They may be sites and locations that are proximal to areas which are priority for muck removal that may be municipally owned, okay? We will also be looking at those sites that are privately held, but should be considered for acquisition by the county, just like FIND does in its program. They looked at the Intracoastal Waterway, and they saw areas where they were either strategic because of certain peaks, or maybe it was the volume of dredge material that had to be removed, basically in perpetuity, to maintain the federal channel. So they identified areas that were strategically located, the logistics, the cost, the ability of equipment to move the material. Well, we'll do the same thing, except we'll be looking at non-FIND sites with the same concept in place, okay? We do not plan on doing an encyclopedic or exhaustive chasing rabbits. What we will be looking to do is do it on a strategic basis where you'll get the most return on investment. Let's go back to that 1,000 people a day coming to Florida. Well, a lot of those people want to be close to the water. And so areas that may be available to build a condo or to build a house, maybe that's the location where we need to identify those particular parcels as strategic for the management of the muck placement. So we may say these are areas that we propose that the county acquire, because 10 years from now, they may not be available. There may not be enough money available to acquire those parcels because they've got a 4-story condo. So, from that standpoint, DMMA, we will be looking at DMMAs. We will also create a matrix that is basically a decision-making tool to assist the individuals on the committee and county to say, okay, where are the priorities that we want to put these dollars to advance the muck removal? Elements that we will consider, obviously, is the dredge material, the logistics, cost, potential contaminants, cultural resources. We'll consider the probability of SAV restoration. In some cases, it's not a matter of removing the most muck. Maybe it's a matter of removing the muck that the substrate is of a nature that SAV restoration can occur rapidly. So we'll put all of those into the matrix. Will be part of the decision-making process as to that 3-year rolling plan. Now, sediment characterization from an engineering perspective, like the FIND sites, that's only temporary placement. So you need to dewater. You need to use whatever techniques are possible. It may be flocculants to dewater and concentrate, and then remove that material from the FIND sites. So from a technology standpoint, we'll be considering those aspects in terms of sediment characterization. Obviously, permit-related designs. We are not using this approach to do what you already have consultants to do, which is detailed plans and specifications that will go out for bid. Our focus will limit the plan view and cross-sectional view simply to a level of detail to get the permits. Obviously, we'll have a DEP permit. We'll have the 4345 form, which is the Corps of Engineers permit form. And we'll obviously answer the RAIs. I want to say something about the RAIs. We've had questions about how many RAIs do you expect? Well, that goes back to that very important task 2, which is the consensus building. Essentially, we're going to have a pre-application meetings at the very highest level with the agency folks, natural resource, as well as the regulators, to determine and get an agreement as to what they will need. The feedback they've been given to us says, help us help you, okay? Multiple times at those meetings, that was help us, the agency people, help you, the applicant, the county, make this a reality and make it as flexible as possible. I mean, there have been discussions where they've said, you know, maybe we can, looking at the fact that it's environmental restoration dredging, and that's really important, is, you know, maybe we can open those manatee windows. Maybe we can be a little bit less restrictive because of what the purpose and need of this is, and also going back to the fact that we're on the clock. You know, we, the environmental stewards, the agency people have heard, and we want this to happen. So, and it may seem, you know, a little simplistic that, you know, you've got these bullets that, oh boy, this is going to be a cakewalk. Well, I can assure you, it will be a challenge. The consensus building with the regulatory and the natural resource agencies, very high level. We'll be bringing a lot of brain power to the forefront of this. Let me roll back something. There have also been some conversations about, well, there are already some maintenance dredging permits, and there's also some aquatic habitat restoration permits. But in our conversations with the agencies, you know, they say, you know, that language to qualify for those is very narrowly crafted, okay? So being as highly motivated as they are in our conversations with them, they're saying, you know, maybe that's a starting place, but we need to open that up within the programmatic permit. So they are coming to the table and saying, help us help you. And I truly believe they mean every word that they're saying. When it comes to questions, let me throw out a few questions that may help the discussion. One question may be, does this mean can we dredge anywhere, anytime? And the answer is no. Does it mean that we have all of the information that we'll need for the 15-year period? The answer is no there. In terms of the first one, the permit conditions will result in a environmental checklist. For example, they will need, in order to have quote-unquote reasonable assurance, we will have to do, or someone will have to do the work which says, okay, specifically how much dredge material are you going to remove from a certain area, a certain zone? And where are you going to put it? Well, we're going to put it right over here. Where you have to give us some survey data that shows that that DMMA has the capacity to take that material, because we can't risk too much material going over there and having a dike failure and causing that. So maybe some survey. There may be a requirement for some minimal contaminant testing, but you won't be going back to permitting. You won't be subject to Chapter 120, and critically important is you won't be going back through Section 7 consultation, because Section 7 consultation is one of the things that can drag out almost forever, because the individuals that are doing the listed species review simply don't have what they feel is enough information. And I can tell you right now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, sitting across the table from them, said, we want this to happen. We are willing to sit at the table with the county and with the consulting staff to say, what can we do to help you? So from that standpoint, I will say that I've done a lot of permitting in my lifetime, but the agencies are open and motivated at the highest levels to say, we're there. We are at the table. We want to make it happen. And if it's your wish to follow the programmatic approach that we're suggesting, is that our team is more than willing, ready, and able to assist you. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Well, let me start with John, I'm going to go to Charles, and then over to Terry.
I got a comment and 2 questions. Comment is, this is brilliant, and roll forward with it. I hope all the folks involved jump on it like a hobo on a muffin. It's wonderful stuff. Question 1, did I understand that in your list of all the places that this covers, the South Indian River Lagoon in Brevard County is not covered?
We've said that
You said Central, North, Banana River, and Mosquito
Southern
Lagoon.
Mosquito Lagoon.
Southern Mosquito, but not South IRL.
The Central Lagoon goes all the way through Brevard County and Indian River County.
Thank you. And the other, this is an issue that we haven't discussed in this group, and it may not be your circuit at all, but it will help enable the savings that this can bring forward, and that has to do with procurement design. Say the county, find, and a municipality, all 3 have dredging projects in a certain year, and they're willing to sequence them if they can all hire the same company and avoid 2/3 of the mobilization costs that way. Does this envision that these 3 entities would get together and issue a single RFP and a single contract, or would each contract have an element that awarded points for reducing mobilization costs? If the, I mean, it's a little bit like, it's an odd version of the prisoner's game where each person is affected by the unknown actions of the other 2. Has this been thought of, and does it bear on the success of this whole thing? You may have the perfect approach to permitting, but if the procurement design is stupid, we end up with stupid costs involved with it.
Well, you know, I would say, so the programmatic permit's going to be in place. What the criteria that will have to be met to say, okay, the state and the Fed say, yep, that qualifies for the programmatic permit, get after it. In my mind, that's where if you have a group of municipalities, then it would be just logical that they would say, okay, we'll put out a joint solicitation, and this is the sequence of the dredging, how it would occur, and here's our funding sources to make it happen. I see that's very doable, very, very doable. I've had the experience where we've had federal maintenance dredging contracts, but then you have individual locations within the ports, and the priority is the federal work first, okay? But they allow the private entities, different port users, to basically tag on to their contract so that they save, the Corps is paying the mobilization cost, they're not paying the mobilization cost. But in the ultimate end, the Corps, the feds benefit anyway, because when you go to commerce, interstate commerce, that's what they're all about. That's why the federal project was authorized in the first place. So it's actually a win-win it's a win-win-win for everybody.
It sounds to me like there's some work for the county, for fine, for the municipalities to think strategically about procurements and to try and minimize costs there.
And I'll say this too. I'll say once, as part of that consensus building aspect, I think as everyone comes to understand what it's going to be, then I think that sort of thinking will click on and say, okay, let's start, as they're working through the programmatic permits, let's start working through what sort of agreements we have to have in place to allow that.
You might even arrive with a master IDIQ contract that had no money in it, but had somebody ready to go with it, and the entities throw money in in the form of task orders.
Absolutely.
Make it work.
That's another approach that would work.
Okay, let's go to Charlie.
Yeah, good. Hey, thanks for a great content-rich presentation, Stephen. Curious, though, if you're saying the duration of the permit would be probably 15 years?
Correct.
And so Do you think there would be additional specific conditions in the permit because of the way we're approaching it, because it's a little riskier for the state and federal government to grant such a permit?
There has been no hesitancy at all in terms of, that's too long. Primarily, it goes back to that rolling 3-year aspect of the approach, is that, for example, we can't do all the survey right up front and say, okay, Corps, here's the survey for all of these areas, because we know in years 3 and 4, year 1 survey, it's not realistic. Muck moves around. So there's a certain adaptive management aspect to this that the agencies are willing to accept, that as long as you fall within the framework of the programmatic permit, there will be certain things that you'll have to supply to them as the years go on. That's an important aspect too, is because they have indicated a willingness in terms of technology, because technology from where we stand now to technology in years 13 and 14, there may be improvements to dredging equipment. There may be improvements, we may be bringing equipment from Europe that we don't even know about yet. So there's another aspect of where those agencies are saying, there's going to be flexibility that we are willing to build into that programmatic permit to have a permit period that's 15 years, but we can't see over the horizon just yet of what may be here in year 10, but we're willing to agree to that 15-year permit with some adaptive management tools within it.
You had also mentioned in one of your slides, you talked a lot about permitting from the DEP and then from the Corps, but you also had the St. John's River Water Management District up there. Could you just explain a little bit for everybody their role they might play?
I think what we see for the Water Management District, the DEP will be issuing the permit, but in terms of data collection and information that's available, there are a number of sources that we will act as a clearinghouse in terms of getting data, doing data gap analysis, and bringing information, whether it's from the Water Management District, it's from the universities. So from that standpoint, we don't see the district so much as acting as the regulator to issue a permit, but more of a contributing partner to the process.
Great, thanks. And I don't know if you mentioned the definition of RAI for everybody to understand.
An RAI, basically it's a request for additional information. When you submit an application, there will be things that are missing that in order for them to issue the permit, they will say, okay, you left out section, township, and rank, or you didn't include survey volume or something. So that's what an RAI is.
Okay, and Terry.
I'd like to echo John's comment. Thanks for doing a great job in putting some real meat on the bones for a concept that's been in the plan from the get-go. So this looks like really good stuff. I know it's a work in progress, but do you have, and I think this whole checklist approach and, going through this sort of incremental approval process within the framework of a long-term permit is great. Do you have any idea of what the turnaround time might be? You generate a questionnaire, you fill out a questionnaire for a particular site that you intend to attack. You just turn it in and start, or do you see a approval cycle?
In the informal conversations that we've had, they are telling us more than likely you could probably look at a 30 to 45 day turnaround on an environmental checklist.
Whoa.
I will tell you that that they are seriously behind this, because again, some of them actually were voters, and they know there's a certain time frame for those monies. There's no guarantee that in 8+ years a similar referendum will pass. You would hope that the community would say, hey, this is working so well, let's do it again. But there's no guarantees. And so from that perspective, they're saying we don't want to set up a programmatic permit and then you give us the checklist and you got to wait 6 months for us to come back and say,
Right.
oh yeah, get going.
Right.
Because that's time lost.
And the other thing, obviously, is that it's going to save the agency's time and money, too.
As managers, they are saying, bring it on.
Yeah.
This is good for us and our staffs, and it'll take something that we don't need to look at 5 years, 10 years. You know, this is, as long as you feel the environmental restoration dredging focus, and you meet what's on that checklist, which will be part of the development of the consensus building, you are looking at a commitment for a quick turnaround.
I have one more quick question. That is, so these DMMA sites, it may not be your question to answer, but, you know, we use them for a while, like the football field, and you know, we finish the project and we're done with that area. Those can return to other uses, right? I mean, it doesn't stay DMMA forever. Question.
My recommendation, and Shailesh, if you've got some additional thoughts, but having done this as long as I've done it and worked with FIND when I was with the Corps, you know, seeing the pressures of land use, I mean, you could have a municipal location and someone thinks, you know, it's got a beautiful vista, we ought to put a park here, okay? But once the park goes there, the DMMA use goes away because people won't want you to take the park away.
Right.
But so from that standpoint, having a dedicated site, and this is what it's for, that's, in my opinion, is what it should be preserved for, because the pressures in years 5, 10, and 15 is, if you don't preserve it for that particular use, for the maintenance and maintain the restoration of the IRL, you're going to have a problem.
So then the strategy is find these locations that would service a wide extent of the river, not just Turkey Creek and the old truck stop or whatever we used.
We will be looking at a comprehensive, basically, we'll be looking comprehensively at both municipally held and privately held, and make recommendations for, if it's municipally held, let's protect it for that particular use. If it's privately held, for acquisition now.
What's your notion of the extent? How far away could the DMMA be from the actual muck dredging site?
Well, you know, Shailesh.
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Shailesh Patel with Dredging and Marine Consultants. I've known Virginia and Dr. Windsor. We held the first muck workshop here for dredging in 1995, so I've been involved in a lot of projects. So to address your question directly, there are booster pumps that are used. So in essence, you can go 5, 6, 7 miles away. We've done a lot of work in the phosphate industry in Central Florida, and they can move slurry up to 10 miles away. So that is not a problem. There's a cost associated with it, of course, as you go further and further with elevation.
Right away, too.
Exactly. But I think to address your question about also DMMAs, it's important that we look at it from a more holistic approach, because in 1995, we said the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's make sure while we have land available along the shorelines that we can capture that. And through the process, when we had the economic boom, some of the land got lost, if you will, for those reasons. But now look at it, you know, Crane Creek has been dredged twice, Turkey Creek probably going on the third time now. So having those DMMAs available makes your process that much easier. And then once those are permitted, you know, it's easy also for the regulatory agencies, because they've got a route from the dredge area to the DMMA, so it makes it easy for them to say, yes, as long as you follow the same process, we don't have any objection. So sites like BV52, how many times have they been used for FIND? So I think that's the mentality we're going to bring to say, let's look at strategically capturing these sites while we can.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and Courtney.
Thank you. I think this is a great idea too, and I'm very supportive of it. I do just want to know, with the prioritization of the areas, and this is maybe more procedural for the cities to know, if cities were planning on submitting dredging projects, should we wait until you're done, or should we submit them now so you know what we're wanting to do so you can put them in? or how does that work?
Bring it on.
Bring it on? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. And then I also agree with the keeping of those sites. This issue is never going to go away. We're never going to be done restoring the lagoon because we're so slow to change our behaviors, and we're always going to be putting pollution in the lagoon with our land use and our cars and everything else. So I think we need to be smart about the future and make sure that we retain these sites to make sure that we can keep doing what we're doing now, long into the future. So thank you for being so proactive about this, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I will say, to give you a level of how serious, FIND and the Corps are, I was working on a project, and I was with the Corps at the time, and it turned out through some happenstance that someone built a very expensive waterfront. I mean, we're talking multi-million-dollar house on an FIND site. The site had not been used, and I'm not even sure if it had ever been used, but it had been acquired by FIND and was in real estate division's books. And the colonel took legal action that had the owner take that house down because it actually, what it was, that the house was placed on where the pipeline had to go through to get to the DMMA. So you can tell how serious that was in terms of take the house down, because we own it. That's serious.
Okay, I'm going to go over here to John and then back to Charlie. Oh, and
Thank you.
so Vinny will be after you.
I love the concept of environmental restoration dredging, and this is right along what we've all talked about for a long time, so thank you. And I'm obviously was surprised when we heard we might get approval in 45 days, so let me back up. How long is it going to take us to put this together for the approval, number one? And the $1 million that we will save, estimated, that is above and beyond our cost to pay for having all this put together?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when do we submit? And Matt, you on board? That's all I care about.
Okay, what was the first question was?
Essentially,
How
you
long?
said that it might take 45 days for
Oh, okay.
approval. How long before we can get it in there for their approval?
Well, I guess we have to get under contract.
Yeah, so I think it's a two-step question. One is, how long will it take to get this programmatic environmental restoration dredging permit issued? And
I think
That he answered, 45 days.
No.
No, misunderstood.
that's checklist. That's
Oh,
check-
okay.
so we have to get the master permit first, and then we come in with, okay, now we want this site, now we want this site, now we want, and instead of each of those sites requiring a whole permit review
Correct.
with Section 7 consultation and Chapter 120 hearings, they just have this checklist. That's the 30 to 45 day process. But the getting all this underway, I'll let Stephen.
I think we'd like to say, we'd like to be reasonable, and we anticipate we'd like to beat this, but we'll say 18 months.
10,
18 months.
18 months.
But I can tell you that based on our initial conversations with the folks at the highest level, when you get their attention and you get their support, things happen. Okay? So I don't want to overpromise. We'll underpromise and overdeliver. But I think 18 months would be a reasonable estimate.
Existing projects, for example, the MIMS project, which I believe is already permitted, it's not going to impact that in any negative way whatsoever. This is going to run concurrently, and we'll get it all from on board.
Okay, Jimmy.
Thank you.
So I just two quick points. First thing, with every plan, there's pros and cons, and I think the pros way outweigh the cons here. The two things that I would mention, and I don't know if it's a Virginia department or it's part of this plan, but since there would be only a single option for a 120 challenge, maybe advertise fullier, or I don't even think fullier is a word, so I'm just going to make up another word while I'm sitting here. Maybe advertise further longer periods of time or in more areas because you are going to be dredging or getting a permit for a larger area. So while it would be tough for one person to hold up an entire thing, if one person did have an issue with it, I would hate to tell them, I'm sorry you couldn't, we had one opportunity, if it wasn't adequately advertised or told as such. So I might recommend that the advertising for that single challenge opportunity be deeper than it normally is.
Well, I'll put it this way. I think the community will be informed on a regular basis through the Brevard Lagoon website, so they'll know what the objectives of what's being proposed. Procedurally, DEP has its procedure. I mean, it's they put it out on notice, and you have a certain time frame. I mean, that's a legal aspect that we can't change. But as far as making sure that the public knows, what we're doing and why we're doing it, we'll be fully transparent.
Well, and that's why I was saying maybe it's a Virginia question. Maybe it's something we get ahead of and take ads out wherever we need to, just to make sure that everybody's fully aware of why we're doing this and giving them a chance. The second thing was just echoing Terry and Courtney's points about the property acquisition. I do think that it would be prudent to have in the plan or whatever is going forward, what you guys plan to do with the property and maybe the cost associated with it long term. So that way you're not caught up having to answer that question or people saying, oh, well, it's going to cost us this much.
really good
Because if you provided the information, then it's hard for people to go out there and say, oh, this is the story when you said, no, this is the story.
Yes.
So I might recommend that you put that ahead of time.
Very good point.
Okay, Charlie, maybe we can wrap it up.
Yeah, so, we've been looking for funding from state and federal government. And if we receive federal funding that would be applied to the dredging, would that subject this to a NEPA review?
If you were to have federal dollars committed in some sort of form, it would trigger NEPA. Now, the permit process, the programmatic permit process triggers NEPA itself, okay? And those informal conversations, despite the wide geographic area that we're looking at, the feedback that we're getting from the senior managers at the Corps is environmental assessment level of analysis that can be done, not an environmental impact statement. Again, motivation. Environmental impact statement, you're looking at 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And now you're in year 7. So they get it. They get it. And really, with the knowledge that we have in terms of what does it take to do muck dredging, there's a lot of science there. So they're saying it will trigger NEPA, but we don't see it as a big
So
deal.
you can't tier off the previous NEPA? I thought the Corps usually had a way to.
You can tier. It'll be their decision on how they want to do it, but you can tier. We've done it many times.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And will you introduce?
Yes. So our next speaker is Mark Regan. He's an Engineer 3 with Brevard County Utilities Department. And while he comes up and hopefully can figure out how to get his PowerPoint up, I just want to thank the committee. I know this was not what we discussed last month as being on your agenda today, but obviously it's a very important topic for the community. I bumped our groundwater pollution topic to next month to make room for this. Many eyes are on the discussion today and the presentation today, and there's trust that this committee will act responsibly and help guide the community in how we move forward on this issue. As you know, the county manager's office is here represented by John Denninghoff. And when we started last month's meeting, we joked about, how many people have power back, how many people have water back. I didn't ask how many people have their sewage back. And when we prepare for a storm, right, we make sure that we have our flashlights and our radios and our batteries and our bottled water. We don't ask, do you have your porta potty? So I think it's amazing to recognize that sewage treatment is something that we expect, that we have come to take for granted to operate round the clock. And these folks, while we're very frustrated with the infrastructure and the condition of the infrastructure and the needs to work on that, the people worked around the clock in a very dedicated and ingenious manner to try to minimize the damages. And I personally am very gratified and appreciative of their hard work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you, Virginia. Okay, my name is Mark Regan, and I'm the engineering manager for Brevard County Utility Services. And thank you for inviting me here today to make this presentation and speak on behalf of all the men and women who work for Brevard County Utility Services, and for our director, Jim Helmer, who can't be here today because he's recovering from a surgery that he had a couple of weeks ago. So please keep a good thought for him. I know that the committee has a time limit, a 15-minute time limit on presentations, and I'm going to do my best to conform to that. But I may need 19 minutes, so I'm going to ask the committee's indulgence for 4 minutes extra time.
Okay, I think we can give you that.
Okay, thank you very much. And, you know, I'm an engineer, and so I'm going to do my best to avoid using jargon or abbreviations or acronyms, but if I slip up, I've handed out a glossary that you can refer to. What I hope to do here today is answer some of these questions. Why is sewage being discharged into the Indian River Lagoon? Why hasn't it been stopped? What are we doing to stop it? How long is it going to take? What's it going to cost? And who's going to pay for it? Well, Brevard County Utility Services is just one of many water and sewer utility providers in Brevard County. Brevard County Utility Services operates in 6 areas of the county. In MIMS, we provide sanitary sewer and drinking water. At Port St. John, we provide sewer service east of the railroad. On Sykes Creek and Merritt Island, we provide sewer service from Hall Road south to about Jefferson Middle School. On the mainland, we provide sewer services in Suntree and Vieira and a small portion of West Cocoa. And then on the beach side, sewer service from just south of Patrick Air Force Base to Melbourne Beach. And then in Barefoot Bay, water and sanitary sewer service. So in terms of the Indian River Lagoon, the areas that are most challenging for us is the South Beach sanitary sewer system, because that is the only area in this latest storm that the utility was forced to discharge wastewater into the lagoon. So why is sewage being discharged into the Indian River Lagoon? Well, wastewater is discharged into the lagoon when the inflow to the sewer is greater than its capacity to collect it and treat it. The South Beach sewer system was designed for 8 million gallons a day. Well, Hurricane Irma dropped 10 inches of rain. 10 inches of rain on that service area is 2,350,000,000 gallons of water. So if only 0.3% of that rainfall enters the sewer system, it becomes completely flooded. So how would the rainfall get into the sewer system? Well, through inflow and infiltration. Now, normally, the groundwater table is, well, most of the sewers, the public sewer is underwater already, beneath the groundwater table. And groundwater enters through cracks in the gravity sewer pipes and cracks at the service connections, or just cracked vitrified clay pipe. Most of this sewer over on the beach side was built with vitrified clay pipe. It's in 5-foot sections. So every 5 feet, you've got a pipe joint with a 50-year-old gasket in it. And then the beach sand, causing differential settlement, causes that brittle pipe to crack. Then as the rainfall soaks and saturates the soil, the water table rises, we start to get inflow and infiltration from other defects in the pipe, such as cracks in the manhole or the mortar between the bricks, bad lateral connections, broken pipes and the homeowner's plumbing, cracked fittings. So all of those defects start to contribute inflow into the system. Then as the storm continues to flood and the street becomes flooded, we see the water overtopping the manholes, coming in through the top, or coming in through missing manhole covers where someone decides to remove a manhole cover to drain the street. Or the water finds broken cleanout caps that have been hit by lawnmowers and broken and not replaced. And then there's always the illegal connections of roof drains and swimming pool drains that add inflow into the sanitary sewer system every time it rains. Well, how do we find these defects? We do it through smoke testing. These photographs are some examples of a smoke test that was done in the year 2000 over on the beach side. And so you can see these things are all over the place. Here's one in a parking lot. Here's a swimming pool drain. Here's a stormwater drainage inlet connected to the sanitary sewer. So we have in our office 5 volumes of 3-ring binders with pictures just like this. And one of the problems is that as fast as we correct them, as fast as they're corrected, others form. So even if today we were to fix every single one of them and they were all fixed and the entire system was watertight, someone would plant a tree tomorrow and strike another one. So it's an ongoing process. So how often does the sewer get flooded? Well, in the last 13 years, it's flooded 7 times, usually from hurricanes or tropical storms, any event where we get a lot of rainfall. So what is being dumped into the lagoon? Well, this is really an uncomfortable part of the discussion because it's going to sound like I'm telling you it's not that bad. Well, it is bad. We know it's bad. About 20 million gallons of wastewater, a combination of sewage and stormwater, were discharged into the Indian River Lagoon during this latest storm. And this chart shows what influence that stormwater has on the sewer system. Raw sewage, we would expect to see biological oxygen demand in a concentration of 200 parts per million, nitrogen at 30 parts per million, and phosphorus at 10. The discharge that went to the canal in Indian Harbor Beach was 43 parts per million biological oxygen demand, 11 parts per million nitrogen, and 2 parts per million phosphorus. The wastewater, the permit, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection permit for the South Beaches wastewater treatment plant allows discharge to the lagoon at levels of 20 parts per million BOD, 12 parts per million nitrogen, and 4 parts per million phosphorus. And just ordinary run-of-the-mill stormwater, one would expect to find 10 parts per million BOD, 2 parts nitrogen, and 0.3 part phosphorus. So from that 20 million gallon discharge at the 11 part per million nitrogen concentration, we have regrettably discharged 1,835 pounds of nitrogen into the Indian River Lagoon. So how's this going to get fixed? Well, the key, of course, is to just keep the stormwater out of the sanitary sewer system. So in the last 3 years, the utility has spent $7.4 million lining the gravity sewer pipes throughout the system. $4.2 million of that was spent in the South Beaches gravity system alone. And we have $2.1 million budgeted in this fiscal year for additional lining. But the utility can only repair what's in the right-of-way. We can't go into private property to make the repairs, so we're going to need the cooperation of the homeowners. So we've already formed a partnership with the City of Satellite Beach to create a pilot program for creating incentives for the homeowners to inspect and repair their plumbing. This diagram shows the ongoing program that the utility has for lining the public sewer. The areas shown in pink are the pipes that are already lined. The ones in blue don't need lining. They've been inspected, or they're PVC, which comes in 20-foot lengths, by the way. And the green pipes are the ones that still remain to be lined. And we expect to completely line all of that system will cost about $14 million. And then the lateral repairs, that's really unknown, but we estimate that on this beachside system, it'll probably cost about $4.5 million. So what can we expect from this pipelining project? What are we going to get out of it? Well, the EPA has studied lining programs, I&I reduction programs that it has funded, and has found that up to 30% of that I&I can be eliminated. So that doesn't sound like a complete solution, the 30%, but it might be enough in our circumstance. We figure that if we could eliminate 15% of the I&I that we experienced during this recent storm, that we would not have to discharge into the lagoon. So what alternatives are available to stop this discharge? Well, we could do nothing and just accept the fact that the discharge to the lagoon is going to occur 0.3% of the time. It's the lowest cost alternative, but it's unacceptable. We have to do something. So we could increase the capacity of the sewer system, just make everything bigger. Well, that's a bad idea, because then those pipes don't get flushed out the other 99.7% of the time. It just becomes a real mess. And it's really, really expensive. We could try to store that overflow, which in this case was 20 million gallons, in retention basins, which is really just an extension of what we're doing now. That's really a land-intensive situation. We figure it would take 12 acres to contain 20 million gallons. And it's essentially a cesspool, and nobody wants that. We could build storage tanks. On the soccer fields at the Indian Harbor Beach Library, Satellite Beach Library, 6 acres. We could put 20 million gallon storage tanks, 75 feet diameter, 40 feet high, for about $30 million. That's another alternative. Or, of course, we could reduce the inflow and infiltration, just continue the program that we're working on and create incentives for homeowners to repair their plumbing. Or we could construct a wastewater treatment plant at that discharge location. We found that when we're in that emergency situation and all the pipelines are full and all the pumping stations want to pump at the same time, if we take that one pumping station in Indian Harbor Beach offline, the rest of the system can perform even in that emergency. But creates that discharge situation. So the idea is create a treatment plant there to treat that overflow. That's a $50 million situation. So what about the discharges to the lagoon from force main breaks? This is another topic. So on the beach side, there is one primary trunk line that runs from Sea Park near Patrick Air Force Base, 13 miles south down South Patrick Drive and Riverside, all the way down to Melbourne Beach where the treatment plant is. There are 3 major pumping stations on that force main, B19 in Sea Park, B20 in Indian Harbor where the discharge occurred, and B1 down on Coral Way and Riverside Drive. So depending upon where that force main breaks, that's going to determine how much wastewater we have to control, because you have to shut off the lift stations to make the force main repair. Meanwhile, the sewage continues to flow to the lift station. We've got to pump it out. We've got to handle it. So if for example, the force main were to break south of B1, we have to manage 150,000 gallons per hour. That is a 6,000-gallon tanker every 2 minutes. Well, you can't fill a 6,000-gallon tanker in 2 minutes. And you can't get enough 6,000-gallon tankers to have one available every 2 minutes when they have to drive 6 miles south to the treatment plant and back. So the tankers just can't keep up in that situation. At that point, it just becomes a matter of overflow management. Some difficult decisions have to be made. At the B19 lift station, the first place that sewage is going to show up as the sewer floods is Sea Park Elementary School. There is an adjacent stormwater retention pond. We opt for the retention pond. And generally speaking, whenever we have a service interruption at a lift station, the choice is, does it come up into the houses, or do we find some alternative? Our priority is, of course, to use tankers and pump it out with tankers and manage it that way. And I'll just make a point here that if you see a tanker at a lift station, that's a good thing. It's taking the sewage out. It's not putting sewage in. I think some people think that maybe the tankers are introducing sewage and making the problem worse. No, it's taking the sewage out. So we start with tankers. Then we look for local opportunities at the lift station, isolated retention areas. The next choice is stormwater retention pond, and then finally into the canal. So in the last 5 years, force main breaks have caused us to release into the lagoon 6 times, the largest overflow being 1.4 million gallons. And this is the bad stuff, because this is raw sewage. This is not the diluted stormwater. This is the bad stuff. So what are you going to do to stop the force main breaks? Well, we've discovered that on that trunk line, the B19 force main, there are 2 sections of it that were constructed with PVC pipe. And it turns out that that PVC in that application is just not durable enough. So we are replacing it with ductile iron steel pipe. The rest of the force main is ductile iron pipe. So we already have in the ground from Banana River Drive to Inwood a replacement steel pipe. And from Inwood to DeSoto, the contractor is mobilized and ready to finish that job off. It should be finished in a few months. So that'll take that piece out. And then on the Riverside piece, there's a piece from O'Galley Boulevard south to Oakland Street, about 3.5 miles. We have $400,000 in our budget this year to design the replacement for that piece of PVC. And then the construction should take place in fiscal year 19 and 20. So what about other overflows? Well, sometimes we have a power outage. Our stations are run by electricity. We are adding fixed generators to many of the lift station sites. And we've also started using engine-driven pumps at those locations. We found that sometimes the control panel is damaged, maybe by lightning or something else, and having electrical power from a generator doesn't help. But an engine-driven pump will continue to pump regardless of the electrical status of the station. And also, part of our partnership with Satellite Beach, they've offered their field staff to help us in those emergency situations. And we hope to be able to extend that type of partnership among other municipalities as well. And then there are houses that are built very low, at low elevations along the lagoon. And whenever there's a service interruption, a fault, as soon as that sewer starts to rise, it finds that lowest manhole and comes out the top or comes up into the house at a lowest elevation. But there are engineering solutions for that too. We can isolate that branch of the gravity sewer and put a separate pumping station on that and pump it up. Or even an individual house, put a grinder pump at that house and pump it up. And then the utility has a number of ongoing improvements. I didn't hand it out, but in 2013, the utility did a infrastructure asset analysis of the entire infrastructure. And out of that study, we found $130 million of improvements to be made, a get well plan, over 10 years. We're in year 4 right now. And I brought copies of the update to that plan, where it's color-coded. You can see the projects that were completed, highlighted in gray, the ones that are in construction in orange, the ones that are in design in green. So I can hand that out after the presentation. Now, utility services, Brevard County Utility Services is funded solely by the ratepayers of the utility, the customers. The utility does not take tax money. So all of these projects I've talked about and all the projects in that infrastructure book, they're all funded by user fees, by the customers of the utility, not taxes. Although this board has approved 4 septic to sewer projects that the utility is going to construct, and those 4 septic to sewer projects will be funded with tax money from Indian River Lagoon project. So what is the utility doing proactively to stop discharges to the Indian River Lagoon? Well, we're going to continue with our inflow and infiltration reduction program. We're going to identify the worst areas of the gravity sewer and do those first. Again, creating partnerships with municipalities over on the beach side and elsewhere will really give us a lot of benefit. Smoke testing the sewers, working with homeowners to fix that plumbing, and finding a way to provide incentives to fix that plumbing. We're looking at opportunities for the overflow storage, treatment, containment, and we have to finish replacing that PVC force main. We'll finish that program, and then continuing with the projects in the capital plan. So that concludes the presentation. I don't know how I did on time. I did what I could, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Well, can I just start with a quick one?
Sure.
Let's see, where is it? It was the 20 million for the I&I. Was that it? Was it, you had estimated the cost of your I&I program? Yeah. To create incentives for homeowners?
Yes.
That was a $20 million program?
Yes.
And what is the breakdown on that? How does that break down?
Pardon me?
Okay, 20 million to create incentives for homeowners
Yes.
so that they can be a part of, this I&I program solving the problem. Now, what does that break down to? What are is it like 10,000 a home, 5,000 a home, matching money?
We don't know. That hasn't been developed yet. And the 20 million, if you look on slide 13, we're saying $14 million to line the public sewers and $4.5 million to repair the laterals. So the utility is going to have to provide the $14 million to line the public sewer, and we estimate that the homeowners in aggregate are going to spend $4.5
So
million.
the laterals are homeowners?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Or drain pipes.
The building drain, correct.
That was a great presentation. I would imagine we have lots of questions here, and we're going to do questions from the audience a little later. First of all, we're going to go around the table here. Start with John.
Probably a question for Dr. Barker. We have a lagoon plan, and it anticipates that there's a certain load of nitrogen and phosphorus in the river to get out, and a certain influx annually. Does it recognize these storm events, or is this kind of an act of God, and it's more stuff than we have in the plan? And if it's more stuff than we have in the plan, should we be adjusting the plan for it?
No, the plan does not include the loading from overflows like this. But, Mark's estimate of what the loading was associated with this diluted sewage was 1,800 and what,
35.
Small.
1,800 pounds. So
18.
in the substitute project list that this committee recommended a few months back, the sum of load reductions from just those projects was almost 100,000 pounds. What's in the total plan is removal of over 750,000 pounds from the lagoon. What we have in the budget projects to start this last fiscal year or this fiscal year, the combination of those substitute projects plus the projects that were already in the plan that are proceeding is 222,000 pounds. So, while there's a lot of emotion and, we don't want to see these sorts of overflows happen, the loading is a small fraction of what we're taking on with the efforts in the plan.
But could I suggest then, next time we crack the plan open, to put a paragraph in there that says that this is negligible and it is well accommodated both in the project and the substitute project list, so that folks don't think we're ignoring it.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go to John.
Just to follow up and put it into dollars and cents, if we use the $88 average, this is a $160,000 problem. I mean, it's horrible to see, I agree, any kind of sewage, even diluted sewage go in. But 1,800 pounds is an insignificant number compared to what we're dealing with. However, when I slide over to slide number 19, quote, "This is really bad," unquote, 1.4 million gallons of raw sewage. I can't do the math fast enough, but what does that translate into nitrogen loading?
Yeah.
Right. 300.
The force main?
The force
Yeah,
main break.
the force
Yeah.
main break.
Yeah. So,
Right.
do we have an answer to that?
Yeah, I could figure it out.
Yeah, because I
I'm
can't
gonna
do that kind
calculate.
of math.
Okay, and then I guess we'll move over to Courtney, and he's calculating. I don't know if you have a question or a comment.
Am I missing something? No, I'm going to do
Every time I meet with
it.
Mark,
I'm going to do it.
And so I wanted to thank the utility for meeting with the city of Satellite Beach numerous times. We started meeting after Matthew and those discharges, and we wanted to get some answers. And we started looking at the program or pilot program for the residential side at that time, and I think it all kind of came together with this last couple meetings, and I appreciate you all. The one good thing about the staff is that they have yet to tell me no on anything, so I appreciate that. They've always been willing to look at an issue. And I think even though the impacts to the lagoon in the broad scheme of things are minimal from a loading impact, the perception is that it's bad. And it is bad, but the perception is it's worse than what we know it is. And perception is reality. So I think what we need to do is, I'd like to see things like, moving up the replacements and things like that, and looking at the pilots. But I did have some just questions that I want you to answer just for the community, because I think these are the things I get on the Facebook pages and stuff like that. And what is the capacity, the treatment capacity of the current plant on the beach side?
8 million gallons a day.
Okay. And when there's no rain flowing into the pipes, what is the current use of the?
6.5 million gallons a day.
So we still have 1.5 million gallons in treatment capacity. Because the question I get a lot is, why do you keep developing? Why do you keep adding development? And, unfortunately, when we can only stop development when it meets public facility capacities, and we still have capacity in the sewer plant. So the overflows come from rainwater, not development. Is that correct?
Yes.
The other question I had.
And the forced main break.
And the forced main breaks. Yeah.
And the other minor, well, actually, the other overflows are contained. It's just the forced main breaks overflow and the flooded sewers overflow.
Okay. And so if we were to look at on the solution side, the alternatives that you brought up, with the storage tanks, you said that would take about 6 acres of land. Is that, and that land is not a Brevard County property? That would be something that you'd have to acquire, correct?
Yeah, well, one idea would be to take away the soccer fields and build it on top of the soccer fields.
At the Satellite Beach Sports Park, is that what you're talking
Yes.
about? And the one that we just put, lights on.
Just say.
That's the one. And then the other alternative would be to construct another treatment plant, and that you had a $50 million price tag on that. Where was that land identified? Did you identify that?
Yeah, at the B-20 lift station, the existing B-20 lift station in Indian Harbor Beach, near the southwest corner of the beach park, at the library. That's the B-20 pumping station, and that's the place where it's overflowing.
Okay.
So that area in there is owned by the county, and maybe we would need probably another small corner of that beach park to fit in all the tanks that would be needed.
Okay. And are you talking about more treatment capacity or storage tanks?
It would be
For that
treatment
area.
capacity. I would, I think building a 6 million gallon a day treatment plant at that location would really take care of a lot of these problems and others.
And would that affect current rates? You would have to go to the county commission for a rate adjustment for that, or would that be within your current?
Yeah, anytime you have to go find $50 million,
Right.
that's a problem.
And you guys haven't done a rate calculation for that at all?
No.
Okay. And so for the, in terms of financing, when we're talking about, how the utility is not funded by ratepay or by taxes, with the exception of expansion. So normally we wouldn't ask current ratepayers to pay for a utility expansion. Is that correct? So that's why the Lagoon tax is paying for that. Would you ever expect a property taxes or Lagoon taxes to pay for maintenance?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, to maintain the additional
The current
pipelines,
facility.
the
Correct, yeah.
conversion? No, the utility would maintain
The
that.
utility would be. So the current pipe replacements that you have going on right now are all currently funded within your current rate structure?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And
Yes.
if we wanted to move those up, you would just have to reprioritize projects? Is that correct?
Move what up?
The slip lining of those pipes, to make it go faster.
Yeah, we would have to shift some of the money around the way it's prioritized. We have lining programs for all 6 areas where we have sewer service. And so we
Okay.
try to, balance it among the entire utility. But that money could be shifted, sure. But I don't know how the finance people do all that, the budgeting.
Right, okay.
That's a mystery
That's a
to me.
prioritize that goes, okay.
I know how to calculate the answer to this loading question, though, and it's 2,332 pounds of nitrogen. No, it's less than that. I used BOD, sorry. What was the nitrogen concentration, 30?
30.
Yes, all right, so that's an error. So let's look at 1.4 million gallons times 30 parts per million times 8.33 equals 350 pounds of nitrogen.
Okay, Charlie.
So I actually got a comment and a question. So I don't think there's any good way to spin a sewage spill to the environment.
Right.
And though it is low compared to what we're removing, I think the public's perception is that, here I'm spending money, my tax dollars, to fund the lagoon, and I'm getting feedback, people saying, well, but then you have the sewage discharge that kind of negates a lot of the effort. So I think it's important we get the word to the public, the magnitude of this compared to what we're doing. My question is, though, so you have a part of the sewer systems here in Brevard County, but there's many other, city-related systems. What type of problems might they be experiencing, and what loads may they be contributing to the environment?
I don't know about the other cities. I suppose that they had the same difficulties that Brevard County had. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Thanks.
Sorry.
I don't think Coco reported any.
So just from reading the reports that each of these spills have to be reported on the state watch site. And from reading those coming in over the last month, the beaches utilities, whether city or county, had more of a challenge than some of the mainland facilities. And so, whether that's to do with salinity in the water table or the age of the infrastructure, but the beach and the staging up of groundwater on the barrier island, the rapid flow of that groundwater through the sandy soils, those areas seem to be challenged more than the mainland.
Well, also you're right, too, in that, for example, in Barefoot Bay, I overwhelmed that system as well, but it didn't force a discharge into the lagoon because the Barefoot Bay wastewater treatment plant has a 320-acre discharge site. So it was able to be contained in Barefoot Bay. So, other municipalities may have that capability inland. But the beach side, there's very little land available. It's low elevation, as Virginia said, it's sandy soil, so it's really tough.
Okay. John, did I see you had a question?
Yeah, I had two questions. The first was on the infiltration. Is that mostly with older homes, or is it with all the homes? Right. I've always heard about the leakage in the pipes, but I hadn't until recently thought about the connection from my bathroom to the street. And I know ours is all new. And are they doing anything different in building practices now to minimize this problem, or is it just mostly the older homes?
It's hard to say, but it's the newer homes as well as the older homes. Anytime, a tree is planted or landscaping is done and the pipe is struck, unknown, or another utility with directional drilling will strike the pipe. For example, in Vieira, there's a new subdivision in Vieira, and there are no homes out there. It's just vacant land with streets and utilities. And so they wanted to put their sewer service, their sewer system into service. We went out to inspect it and opened the lift station. It's full of water. The whole sewer system is full of water. So the developer pumped it down so we could inspect it. We went back the next day. It's full of water. What had happened was a directional drilling company putting in a communication line drilled through the sewer pipe. And the groundwater filled the entire sewer system overnight. So that had to be repaired. But it's the same thing, beachside, the older homes, of course, the older sewers, with age are really leaky, but it's, the new homes are not exempt.
Okay, and the other part of my question was, in the presentation, you mentioned the partnership with Satellite Beach. Could you say a few more words about what's going on with, is there a pilot test established already, or is this something you're seeking, or?
Yeah, that's something the director of the utility was working on with Satellite Beach. And again, he's recovering from his surgery. And so I'm sure he's going to continue working on that. I'm not involved with that. I'm on the engineering side. But I know that he's been talking about, sharing the Satellite Beach field personnel, using generators, trying to create incentives for homeowners to repair the plumbing, to do inspections.
Okay. Madam Chair, when
Courtney, could you speak on the incentives just while we're on it, if you knew anything different to answer John's question?
And I wanted to ask the chair, when time's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion. So just, when the time's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion, but there's a question for Satellite Beach.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure we get all the questions out here.
We were actually going to speak about this afterwards, but what we wanted to do was, when we met with the utility, it was clear that, they were obviously in the middle of a large-scale pipe replacement on the beach side. So that issue is being dealt with. I think we'd all like it to go faster. I would love for it to go faster, but that was clear that they were obviously doing that. We would like to see, a seamless system that rainwater never gets in, and I think we own drainage pipes. We know that that's not possible. The same thing happens to our pipes that happens to their pipes. So we know, and I have pictures that I could show you of some of our pipes after the rains that we're doing emergency repairs on right now. So we know that that's an issue. But we also know that there's a part of the system that gets a lot of intrusion from rainwater that the utility has no control over, but that we could possibly help with in trying to address. So we thought it would be good to do a smoke test first, and possibly look at areas. Maybe we're trying to use data from the lift stations to determine a good pilot area to smoke test and see how bad that really is. We are expecting it to be pretty bad. And then develop a program and come back to you with that would basically incentivize a replacement with that homeowner. So we're developing that now, but we do really need to do the smoke test first to get a good cost estimate. And then also we're working with Virginia's office to try to we need to determine what the amount of reductions would be. And that's a challenge because the data isn't there. So it's a new thing. So we're looking at possibly using septic tank data for that. But it's it's an ongoing program that we've been working on for some time, and we're just hoping to get it off the ground in the next month or so.
Okay. John, you were up, or do you?
I'm done. I just wanted to, when we get back to it, I have a motion to make.
Okay. Terry?
So you gave us some data on the infill problem of rainwater coming in. What's the exfill problem in normal conditions of seepage out of the pipes, and do we have load analysis on that? Is that in our plan, or is that something data that you have or trying to get?
That's a question for me.
Well, I don't know, whoever. First question would be, do we have an assessment in the plan? If I'd memorized 100 pages, I would know, but.
No,
Okay.
it probably is a problem, and no, it is not in the plan. So the groundwater, the $1 million groundwater study, we could look at that scope of work and try to, select maybe some of the same priority areas that Courtney was just talking about, to collect that kind of data.
So the engineering question might be, so if we understand a hydraulic pressure is causing the infill under in the gravity feed lines, is there enough pressure that there's, I'm going to assume, tell me if I'm wrong, that there's less exfill because there's just not, there's not the pressure differential, but there's still some, we don't know what it is, and that might be a good thing to go try to find out. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're right.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
The way he described, but, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the way, Mark, we asked that question with Mark, too, because that is a question of our residents as well. When you all, with the pipe, that little graphic that you had of the pipe, and the pipe is like this, and here's the water table, and the sewers, when the sewer is normally occupying the pipe, it's not filling the whole pipe. So they know of the leaks many times of the sewer that's filling the pipe. But when rainwater infiltrates, there's cracks in the tops of the pipes that they don't know about until that happens. So that gives you an indication of how much sewer is going. It's not nearly of what's going in. Way more goes in, than what filters out. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, you're right.
Could I add one thing on that? I think the overwhelming majority of the exfiltration aspect of that is going to be in the customer side of the system. That's where it's the shallowest. That's where it's going to be the most likely to be above the water table. And when it's above the water table, that's when the water inside, low pressure water inside of a gravity sewer lateral in the middle of somebody's yard or even under their house would be able to have an opportunity to seep out into the ground. Where the publicly owned, utility-owned system is deeper and almost always below the water table, out on the beaches at least. And when it's below the water table, then the water inside the pipe, when it's not full from a big heavy rainfall event, it's actually at the same pressure as atmospheric pressure, which means that the water table being above it has superior pressure and will push into the pipe. So the overwhelming majority of the exfiltration is going to be occurring in the customer side. And so the smoke testing and, trying to resolve some of those types of issues with the system will have a benefit along those lines to limit some of that as well.
Okay, Danielle.
So going along the lines of the exfil, we don't have statistics or numbers that show how much seepage comes out compared to septic tanks, right? And yet we are spending $20,000 a septic tank to hook up to these lines that we don't know how much is going out anyways.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, I think you just heard intuitively, the problem is not seepage out of the normally loaded sewer lines. That's what you need to take away from this conversation.
But it is from each homeowner. They don't have the amount, so they can't show us how much seepage is coming out at the individual homeowner's site compared to a septic tank seepage, right?
I think after the smoke test, and I think we have a good idea right now that it is a big problem, and we probably could come up with that estimate. Whether or not that's good enough for us in the long term is the question, and I think that's why we want to do the smoke test first, to get a good handle on that. And that was really the reason why we wanted to focus on that first, then come back to you. Because, yes, we could have put the program together and said, we think it's this, but we'd rather say, we're pretty sure it's this with this data, and that's why we're doing that first.
I think that's absolutely should be a priority over the septic.
But from the viewpoint of our responsibilities here and the Lagoon plan, the only question is, does this affect how the trust fund dollars are allocated and what's in the plan? This may be something that needs to be fixed, but if the nutrients aren't finding their way, the nasty stuff isn't finding its way into the river, ain't our circuit, not our responsibility. And so I think an assessment of seepage into the river from groundwater really needs to accommodate this and give us some quantification of, is the stuff that Danielle is properly concerned with something we would be properly concerned with, or is it an issue for some other body and some other trust fund?
Can I just add to that? Because the seepage is one thing, but what we're trying to also do is close the cracks for the overflows. And that is a known factor. And then we know that's hurting the lagoon.
Okay.
So that part, I think is reason enough to look at this, because we all know that's an issue. And we do, in the grand scheme of things, I think most of us agree with the numbers that it is less than, what we would take out with muck and things like that, and we understand that. But when you look at it from a stormwater comparison, we spend millions of dollars on stormwater projects, and you see a stormwater nutrient load is less than the discharges are. So, for us to look at this is a good idea.
Well, then it comes down to, is it something for Virginia and her staff to consider as maybe Tetra Tech as well, as caretakers of the lagoon plan? And then is it homework for us to see if we like the answers, et cetera? Perhaps somewhere downstream, and certainly not in the middle of the season of substitute projects, this is a worthwhile thing for us to bring back and converse on.
I have one more part to my question. And this might not be a problem at all. But I understand we have discharge of nitrogen and phosphorus that's measured. But when we're looking at waste going into the lagoon and causing our problems, I'm curious what this waste contributes for bacteria levels and other health concerns compared to the rest of the waste that we might be adding up the numbers for.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't, for example, take into consideration suspended solids. It doesn't take into consideration viruses, pathogens that are not disinfected. But at the treatment plant, there's no magic to the wastewater treatment plant. We use the same processes in the treatment plant that nature uses. We just accelerate them and enhance them. But it's basically, screening, aeration, sedimentation, disinfection, and filtration. And so nature has a certain approach to this that we've adopted in the treatment plant. So you're right. The suspended solids, viruses, pathogens in sewage are not accounted for in
Raw
nutrient
sewage.
loading.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're at 2 hours, and we're going to take, I'm totally sympathetic to the public's feelings on this. I have lived through a sewer backup, and I have to tell you, it's one of the worst things that can happen to you, the loss of control, watching the sewage standing in it. So totally sympathetic. We want to hear comments and questions, but we're going to take a 5-minute break now. We're going to come back, and we're going to conclude with whatever the committee, additional comments, questions, or motion. We've got some business that we have to manage and get through within the next hour, because we're obviously going over our 2-hour mark. We take questions and comments during number 9 on our agenda. So we're going to try to get through that old and new business.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would recommend taking their comments right after this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, good.
We may have to extend the meeting again, but it's timely and it's without, thank you.
Okay.
Point of order, I question whether this is a proper venue for that. We're dealing here with a county problem, a county staff problem, issue, management there. We're not responsible for managing county staff. We're not responsible for managing this particular area of it. We are the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Oversight Committee, responsible for overseeing the spending of the tax dollars in the trust fund. I think turning this into a town hall meeting on sewage overflow may be an inappropriate use of this committee's duties and responsibilities.
Madam Chair, can I respond to that?
Yes.
I just, given the perception of the community and what we're hearing with, there's community members and also political operatives that are using this issue as a way to attack the Save Our Lagoon plan and tax. And I would strongly recommend that we allow the public to express their concerns and vent a little, because I think they deserve it. And we give direction to hopefully the county and the utility on what we believe should happen with that, because their actions do impact our work.
Yes.
And I think we need to listen to the community.
I agree, and we're going to take a 5-minute break now. We'll come back, finish up with the committee, comments.
Thank you. Oh, man.